The risks are so huge. The massive disruption of the way things function.
Does the state need the humans anymore?
Well, there's never been anything like this in history. This is the biggest technology project in human history by orders of magnitude.
And there doesn't seem to be anybody that is pausing to ask the questions about safety.
Emotional manipulation and dangerous advice, all happening to children online from artificial intelligence.
It makes me very sad that I put my life into developing this stuff and that it's now extremely dangerous and people aren't taking the dangers seriously enough.
I was enthusiastic about the positive benefits of AI for society. So when somebody comes to you and says, oh, the sort of work you've done could be extremely destructive, there's sort of unconscious reaction to push it away. But what happened after ChatGPT came out is really another emotion that countered this emotion. And that other emotion was the love of my children. I realized that it wasn't clear if they would have a life 20 years from now, if they would live in a democracy 20 years from now. Yeah, how could I not take this seriously? Our children are so vulnerable. So you know that something bad is coming, like a fire is coming to your house. You're not sure if it's going to pass by and leave your house untouched, or if it's going to destroy your house, and you have your children in your house. Do you sit there and continue business as usual? You can't. You have to do anything in your power to try to mitigate the risks.
It's a kind of competitive logic that self-reinforces itself. But it forces everyone to be incentivized to take the most shortcuts, to care the least about safety or security, to not care about how many jobs get disrupted, to not care about the well-being of regular people, but to basically just race to this infinite prize. We're releasing AI into the world that can speak and hack the operating system of our world. And that requires a new level of discernment and care about how we're doing that, because we ought to be protecting the core parts of society that we want to protect before all that happens.
I'm appalled, actually, by the lack of attention to safety. I mean, imagine if someone's building a nuclear power station in your neighborhood, and you go along to the chief engineer and you say, okay, these nuclear things, I've heard that they can actually explode, right? There was this nuclear explosion that happened in Hiroshima. So I'm a bit worried about this. What steps are you taking to make sure that we don't have a nuclear explosion in our backyard? And the chief engineer says, well, we thought about it, we don't really have an answer.
I am fascinated by AI, both the benefits and the weaknesses of it. But it is revealing to me something more important than what other people are talking about. It's like saying AI will provide boats for everyone, except for the time there's a storm and you don't know how to swim. And I'm okay, use the boat. Also learn to swim. So I think there's something to be said for writing your own symphony, painting your own painting, building your own business, writing your own book. Not for them, not for the output, for your personal growth.
It isn't what's currently happening. We're taking crazy risks. But the important point here is that even if it was only a 1% probability, let's say, just to give a number, even that would be unbearable, would be unacceptable. Like a 1% probability that our world disappears, that humanity disappears, or that a worldwide dictator takes over thanks to AI. These sorts of scenarios are so catastrophic that even if it was 0.1%, it would still be unbearable.
The paradigm shifting moment for many of us will be when we walk outside onto the streets and see humanoid robots walking around. That will be when we realize, in a world of sustainable abundance, where the price of food and the price of manufacturing things, the price of my life generally drops, and instead of having a cleaner or a housekeeper, I have this robot and does all these things for me. What do I end up doing? What is worth pursuing at this point?
And the question is still, who's going to pay for people's livelihoods? So the math, as I understand it, doesn't currently seem to work out where everyone can get a stipend to pay for their whole life and life quality that as they currently know it. And are a handful of Western or US-based AI companies going to consciously distribute that wealth to literally everyone, meaning including all the countries around the world whose entire economy was based on a job category that got eliminated? So for example, places like the Philippines where, a huge percent of the jobs are customer service jobs. If that got automated away, are we going to have OpenAI pay for all of the Philippines? Do you think that people in the US are going to prioritize that? Then you end up with the problem of you have law firms that are currently not wanting to hire junior lawyers because, the AI is way better than a junior lawyer who just graduated from law school. So you have two problems. You have the law student that just put in a ton of money and is in debt because they just got a law degree that now they can't get hired to pay off. And then you have law firms whose longevity depends on senior lawyers being trained from being a junior lawyer to a senior lawyer. What happens when you don't have junior lawyers that are actually learning on the job to become senior lawyers? You just have this sort of elite managerial class for each of these domains. So you lose intergenerational knowledge transmission.
To enter the Jetsons age, like we are going to have humanoid robots
walking around.
Not initially, because the value of these robots is so high in industry for commercial and industrial use, almost all the allocation of those robots is going to go towards industry. So we have a job shortage, a human job shortage of like 200 or 300 million physical laborers that we need to employ by 2030 that we just don't have humans for.
Wow.
And this will help kind of solve that problem.
If you've seen the film WALL-E, this is one picture of that future. In fact, in WALL-E, the human race are all living on cruise ships in space. They have no constructive role in their society, right? They're just there to consume entertainment. And they become enfeebled because there's no purpose in being able to do anything, at least in this conception. WALL-E is not the future that we want. So Amazon, for example, which sells a lot of computing services to AI companies, is using AI to replace layers of management, is planning to use robots to replace all of its warehouse workers, and so on. So even the giant AI companies will have few human employees.
2 days ago, I had the mother of a close friend of mine call me out of nowhere, and she said, "Tristan, my daughter, she just called me crying that some person is holding her hostage and wanted some money." And I was like, "Oh my God, this is an AI scam," but it's hitting my friend in San Francisco who's knowledgeable about this stuff and didn't know that it was a scam. And for a moment, I was very concerned, and I had to track her down and figure out and find my friends where she was and find out that she was okay. And when you have AIs that can speak the language of anybody, it now takes less than 3 seconds of your voice to synthesize and speak in anyone's voice. Again, that's a new vulnerability that society has now opened up because of AI.
We've seen actually over the summer something no one saw coming last year, and that is a huge number of cases, people becoming emotionally attached to their chatbot or their AI companion with sometimes tragic consequences. I know people who have quit their job so they would spend time with their AI. I mean, it's mind-boggling how the relationship between people and AIs is evolving as something more intimate and personal, and that can pull people away from their usual activities with issues of psychosis, suicide, and other issues. But I think we should help educate the public and also be ready for a time when the governments start taking the risk seriously.
When I think about how it affects democracy and the ability to make deep fakes and how it can manipulate people and their opinions to vote one way or another, I have real fear. When it comes to like productivity and the reshaping of business, technologists and people who were part of the internet revolution, they love to say, 20 years ago, 80% of the jobs we have now didn't exist. They love to say that, right? But when you ask them now, they seem to think that I think it's the same, which is all those people who are going to lose those jobs in white collar jobs and knowledge workers, they're not going to not work. There's going to be new jobs. We already know the massive, incredible amounts of energy that it takes for AI to work. Data centers that use up massive amounts of electricity like we've never seen in our lives. Like nuclear has to be a thing. There isn't enough coal or oil or solar or wind to power these things. It just doesn't exist. So nuclear has to be a thing. So go be a nuclear engineer. Go, you want to get an advanced degree? I don't need you to be a coder. Coding was a thing go be a nuke. Because by the way, you got to be just as smart to be a nuke as you have to be so you're going to start to see that. You're going to see energy work. I just think the jobs will change. I don't think they're gonna I completely. One thing I do disagree with, it's just not like you're gonna be a bunch of people walking around bored. I just think the jobs will change.
What happens when you have to pay for everyone's livelihood everywhere in every country? Again, how can we afford that?
Well, if the costs go down 10x of making things.
This is where the math gets very confusing, because I think the optimists say you can't imagine how much abundance and how much wealth it will create, and so we will be able to generate that much. But the question is, what is the incentive again for the people who've consolidated all that wealth to redistribute it to everybody else?
We just have to tax them.
And how will we do that when the corporate lobbying interests of trillion-dollar AI companies can massively influence the government more than human political power? Well, in a way, this is the last moment that human political power will matter. It's sort of a use it or lose it moment.
So what can the person listening to this conversation right now do to help steer this technology to a better outcome?
Let me collect myself for a second. If you know the incentive, which is for these companies with AI, to race as fast as possible, to take every shortcut, to not fund safety research, to not do security, to not care about rising energy prices, to not care about job loss, and just to race to get there first, that is their incentive, that tells you which world we're gonna get. There is no arguing with that. And so if everybody just saw that clearly, we'd say, okay, great, let's not do that. Let's not have that incentive, which starts with culture, public clarity that we say no to that bad outcome, to that path. And then with that clarity, what are the other solutions that we want? We can have narrow AI tutors that are non-anthropomorphic, that are not trying to be your best friend, that are not trying to be therapists at the same time they're helping you with your homework. More like Khan Academy, which does those things. So you can have carefully designed different kinds of AI tutors that are doing it the right way. You can have AI therapists that are not trying to say, tell me your most intimate thoughts and let me separate you from your mother, and instead do very limited kinds of therapy that are not screwing with your attachment. So if I do cognitive behavioral therapy, I'm not screwing with your attachment system.
This sounds corny, but talk to your representative, your MP, your congressperson, whatever it is, because I think the policymakers need to hear from people. The only voices they're hearing right now are the tech companies and their $50 billion checks. All the polls that have been done say, yeah, most people, 80% maybe, don't want there to be super intelligent machines, but they don't know what to do. Even for me, I've been in this field for decades. I'm not sure what to do.